Dice, yeah, ay, ay.
Good day and welcome. I am William, narrator for the FYI, I Am Damaged podcast. What if the moment you realise there's no trauma care for your own team is the moment you decide to build it yourself? Today, Oscar talks with Robert Common, a psychologist, author, and founder of the Beekeeper Group, who turned his own cancer diagnosis, physical abuse history, and the horrific loss of colleagues in a Cambodian bus crash into an international trauma-informed treatment program, blending rigorous psychology with somatic work and spirituality. This is the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. Now a word from our sponsor. Oscar wrote a wonderful children's book called Logan, The Strong-Minded Little Elephant. He also created a wonderful song for his book too. Links in his bio, check them both out.
Meet Logan, the strong-minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strength in their hearts. Logan, the Strong-Minded Little Elephant by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of FYI I Am Damaged. I'm joined by Robert Commons, psychologist, author, founder, and CEO of the Beekeeper Group, an international mental health organization delivering trauma-informed care across Asia and beyond. Robert, thank you for joining me.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Now, if we bumped into you in Chiang Mai with no context, how would you introduce yourself these days beyond CEO and psychologist?
That's a great question. I normally try and avoid admitting that I'm a psychologist. Not that I'm ashamed of it, but it invites conversations that I don't necessarily want to have in my downtime or my free time. So I hide that under a bushel. So I would introduce myself really as someone who's lived in Asia and Africa, used to work for the United Nations, Save the Children, a bit of a world traveler, a bit of a nomad, and someone who's had multiple experiences living around the world on this beautiful planet. I suppose that would be my opening gambit if I was to meet someone. We get a lot of travelers here in Chiang Mai, so it's a relatively easy opening statement for people here.
Now, you've said the Beekeeper was born from your own trauma, addiction, and recovery as from your degrees and resume. What's one personal story that sits at the center of why you do this work?
I suppose the one story that really drove the genesis of the Beekeeper and its creation was when I was working for Save the Children. And I had, if I rewind a little bit, been diagnosed with cancer. And I had to I was living in Cambodia at the time for context. I had to go to Thailand for surgery. I had testicular cancer, and I had the surgery, and I went back to Cambodia. And my team, who were a fantastic, vibrant, wonderful group of young individuals who were passionate about what we did to Save the Children, which was around getting kids out of orphanages and back into their homes with their families, were going on a weekend retreat to the south of the country, and I was unable to go with them due to the fact that I was recovering from surgery still. And that decision ended up, I suppose, saving my life, but also leading to a profoundly traumatic event. So it was the Friday when they were due back from the retreat, and I had sloped off work early, and I received a phone call. And I don't know if you've ever had the feeling when you receive a phone call, you know something terrible has happened. I just had this immediate, deep feeling of dread that sat in my stomach. I answered the phone call, and it was one of the social workers that I worked with. And I couldn't really understand him because his voice was so visceral and so distressed. He was so upset, and he was screaming at me about a location. And I couldn't really understand what he was saying, and eventually he hung up the phone. And I knew from that moment something serious had happened, but I didn't know what had happened. So I made the decision to jump in my car and drive to the office. And when I got to the office, all hell had let loose. We had a big office, over 200 staff. People were running around, screaming. And when I managed to cut through the noise and speak to those people that I need to speak to, it became apparent that there'd been a serious bus accident with the guys who were traveling back. In Cambodia, there are no ambulance services. So we had to triage the scene ourselves. So we went down, we split up into two teams. One went to the bus site, the other went to, I went to the hospital. And it was there that we found the bodies of our staff and the surviving members of our team who were fighting for their lives. And I, in a previous career, had some training in the military where I did some med tech training. So I kind of fell back onto that training in autopilot and helped triage those who survived. I also had to move the bodies of those who hadn't survived. And then get those who were still fighting for their lives into a decent hospital, because the hospital that they were in was a provincial hospital in Cambodia. And to put it into context, it didn't even have paracetamol. So it was, to say it was basic would be an understatement. We managed to move those over a period of about 4 or 5 hours to the only private hospital, or now the only private hospital in Cambodia for treatment. And the total loss was 4 staff and 6 with what I would describe as life-changing injuries. And I suppose it's still, I can remember now with the passage of time, because it was 6 or 7 years ago. I can remember now with the passage of time with greater clarity what happened on that evening and that night and the subsequent morning. But having to tell people who, you know, I loved and I considered as family, that their loved ones had passed away, their wives, husbands, daughters, sons, plus the actual experience of trying to save the lives of those who've been seriously injured and weren't receiving adequate medical attention will be with me for the rest of my life. And from it, I knew what was going to be coming in terms of PTSD for my team. As a psychologist, although I wasn't working as a psychologist at the time, I was working as a kind of a director and kind of more social services orientated commissioning work. I knew what was coming in terms of PTSD. for my team, and there were no services really in Cambodia for that trauma and that trauma work that needed to be done. So after about uh, 6 months or so, getting the team back on its feet, I decided to quit my job and set up the Beekeeper to help address the needs of those who had survived the accident, uh, those who've been affected by the accident, and also set up something beautiful in the memory of those who had lost their lives in the accident as well, because all of them were committed to decent quality services for those who needed it, whether it be social services, mental health services. That's what we did professionally day to day. And all of those who lost their lives were passionately committed to that. So the Beekeeper is in many ways in honor of them, uh, and lives on, or they live on rather, through the Beekeeper and what we do, and our approach to compassion and compassionate care for those living with complex trauma or PTSD.
Mm. And my condolences to losing your staff that you considered family, and, to their families as well. Um, and with continuing that sort of legacy in their name, it's interesting to try to understand, because to be honest, I know nothing of the area. Is those type of services, the mental health services, are they just either non-existent, or they taboo, or what is the view in that part of the world regarding those type of services?
Um, I did a research study for the US government when USAID used to exist, for State Department, and I did a mental health landscape assessment, and that was for Cambodia, and we looked also at other countries as well for comparisons, and really. In terms of Cambodia, services are virtually non-existent. There are only 2 or 3 psychiatrists in Cambodia who are what I would describe of reasonable quality. Um, in terms of psychologists, maybe maybe 2 or 3 psychologists of reasonable quality to international standards. Uh, a few counsellors, but in general, there are no national curriculums, no national guidelines. It's a very underserved, under-resourced area of work, and there is virtually, to all intents and purposes, nothing available.
Mhm. And it's interesting because I've interviewed Jenny Chan, who runs the Pacific Atrocities Education Center, and she gave me insight of how you see the elderly who carry that trauma from in the past of what's been done in that area. And it's, I guess, maybe because of my naivety, but it's that should have sparked like some sort of growth in that sort of area. But is it with the culture and things like that, where things like that aren't really addressed as they would be in, let's say, Europe or the Americas? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, Cambodia, if I look at Cambodia specifically, you have the Khmer Rouge and the genocide that was committed there in the 70s, where 1/3 of the entire country was murdered. Um, and the intergenerational trauma in the country is tangible when you are living there, and it's obvious to everyone. Um, the ways that people deal with trauma are, I suppose, more community based in terms of the way that they try and address trauma. They also look at different approaches. So you would go to your local monastery or temple, Buddhist temple, and maybe talk to your monk. Um, uh, so that obviously depends on their capacity and their empathy and ability. Everyone assumes monks are empathetic and lovely people, but that's not always the case, I'm afraid. I would also say that there wasn't that spark from donors internationally to address the intergenerational trauma and the kind of nationwide PTSD, if you like, that there should have been. And I don't really understand why that was the case. I think it was probably for political reasons at the time with the United Nations and the way that the transitional government was happening. Um, I think, but it was. It's certainly when you live there, it's something which permeates the culture, um, and is starkly obvious because it really wasn't that long ago that they attained stability there. I think it was 1992 that stability started to really begin to take place, which was really not that long ago at all.
Now, with the Beekeeper Group, can you explain to my listeners what it is and what it does and who it serves?
Yeah, so we are an organization that is a residential mental health treatment center. We specialize in a range of mental health issues, a lot of anxiety, depression, OCD, substance misuse are kind of our mainstays. But I suppose trauma is most commonly known as our wheelhouse in terms of what we do. We're a psychologically informed environment and trauma informed workplace, and a lot of what we do is around trauma work. Um, I set up this kind of collective of practitioners, and a lot of it's rooted in the work of a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. Do you know him? He wrote The Body Keeps the Score,
No,
which is kind of it's a
I know the
seminal
book. Yes.
yeah. Okay, so I read that book, and I did my psychologist training before we really understood the somatic nature and manifestation of trauma and where it sits in the body. And when I read that book, for me, it was a huge eye opener because not only am I a Buddhist and practice meditation and breathing, I try yoga, but between you and the listeners, I am absolutely terrible at it. But I do my best. And the foundation of our program here is really robust and great psychiatry, really high quality clinical psychology. And then we have the third pillar, which is our somatic program as well. So everyone has their own bespoke somatic program built into what they do, which is unlike any other treatment center um, really in the world that I'm aware of. It's not for us a little add-on where you might do a yoga class every morning. For us, you do a yoga class, but you get a bespoke program built in around your specific needs, which can address what's going on with you as an individual, but it's also tailored to you as well. So whether you're responding particularly well to trauma release exercises like TRE or box breathing or yoga nidra, whatever it might be, we're able to do more of that with you to equip you with the skills to not only address your trauma whilst you're with us, but also manage it with forward-facing trauma therapy moving forwards after you leave us as well. So yeah, that's the beekeeper in a nutshell. We're also highly ethical in the way that we work too.
Mm. Now, your centers in Thailand, Sri Lanka, with expansions to London and Cambodia, blend clinical psychology with yoga, mindfulness, breath work, and more, which you've outlined for us. Why do you feel so strongly that science and spirituality both need a seat at the table?
Because they work um, in the bluntest way. And I don't believe that you can work with people in silos. You have to meet them where they're at. All of us, or nearly all of us, have a spiritual component to who we are. And our role here is to discover what that is in someone. We don't proselytize Buddhism, for instance, but we might teach people about Buddhism and some of the precepts of Buddhism and the philosophical underpinnings of it, because those truths, if you like, are universal across all religions. And it doesn't necessarily have to be religiosity per se. It can just be your own spirituality within yourself, what you believe in, and what your moral and ethical code is. Because if you can hack your own ethical code internally, your own moral compass, that is a significant step towards healing your own trauma as well.
Now, you talked about navigating the space between trauma and peace, where people are no longer in crisis, but not yet at ease. Now, give us some perspective of this in between space.
Yeah, so that that comes from the work of a guy called Viktor Frankl, who was one of the fathers of modern contemporary trauma theory. And he has some very beautiful quotes, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Um, that's really about the difference between responding and reacting. And that's something which I talk about a lot with patients or clients. Um, uh, so between the space between stimulus, when something happens to us, in that moment, there's a brief second, and it can pass very quickly, where we get to choose what our response is. And we can either choose to respond, which is a more thoughtful, inward-looking process, or we can react, which is a more knee-jerk um, response, which is not necessarily well thought through. It's more visceral in nature. And I think those of us living with significant trauma that haven't necessarily done the work in whatever diverse way that you want to do the work have more of a tendency to react as opposed to respond. And that's not to say that people who have been traumatized are less thoughtful. Is just more of an inbuilt reaction. So, I was sexually abused when I was a child. Um, and if anyone ever touched the back of my legs, I used to have a really violent reaction to it, because it just immediately subconsciously brought up memories of the experiences that I suffered when I was at boarding school. Uh, Now I've been through a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of work on myself. If someone touches the back of my leg, the chances of me turning around and reacting are very different. I respond and just say politely, please don't do that. Uh, I think also there's something about the way that we treat other people in this. Um, and this is a fairly blunt way of describing it, but if someone throws something at you across the street, um, your reaction might be to call him an asshole and throw something back at him. It might be to respond with the same degree of violence that you've just experienced from him or her. Uh, Whereas the real question is, what has happened to that individual that has made them do what they have done? Where's the inquisitiveness um, in terms of their behavior? And that's the space that I'm talking about, that inquisitiveness, that time to respond, to think about what it is that you're doing and not react with some visceral knee jerk reaction, uh, and have empathy for what it is that has happened and what it is that is being done to you first. Does that make sense?
It does because I'm on my healing journey in my 40s, and I'm also a healing from my own sexual trauma. I experience from a family member. And I resonated with everything that you said, because that sort of reaction, growing up, and when I finally realized what happened to me at such a young age, it sort of shifted, and with how I react to certain situations, certain people doing certain things, just like how you said with the touching on the back of your leg. And it just got a little more intense the older I've gotten. And then going into a little spiral of how I'm not being understood by the people who see what I'm going through, but said, rather than say what's going on, say what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I'm the one that's walking around fucked up. So why does
Yeah.
something have to be wrong with me? And going through, then releasing that, and it's been a game changer. And going through that process of recognizing, okay, that even though my visceral response to something might be the most honest thing, it might not be the most right thing at the moment, which led me to processing my emotions and understanding what is affecting me. Am I perfect at it? Not really, but for the sake of my 3 kids and my 3 boys, I'm really putting myself to task to say, hey, look, what I learned from one of my other guests is, what? There's nothing wrong with you, but you've gone through some shit. And it's one of the most honest things that kind of rang to me, because, yeah, there's nothing really wrong with me. I have to deal with my responses to that trauma and how I treat myself, my body. I'm doing my best to treat other people with grace along with myself. And it has led me in a different path of that. If I wasn't on this healing journey, it's, I don't know where I would have been. I probably would have been even more self-destructive, because just to give you, I don't know if you came across my story in any of the episodes that you've listened to, but I was, earning some extra money on the side. I was doing a delivery package for that huge company that's global. And um, I'll mention their name if they want to sponsor. I'm gonna stop mentioning their name. But the last delivery that I did was to the building in the Bronx in New York. Same building, same floor, but not the same apartment. And it was the last delivery. So I was like, going back to the place where it happened, it started off as a numbing feeling, and then, oh shit, I'm here. I texted my wife. I said, look, this is what's going on. I just need some time. And it was a situation where I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's where, for me, I most famously say, that's where I came up with the name of the show, the show I want to do, the podcast and everything. And it just all came to me. And it it's a weird thing, because, I'm up to the belief of where that w- I'm somewhere in the future sending myself that information, that, hey, look, this needs to happen for you to be a better person in the future, whether it's the universe, God, myself, or what have you. Basically putting that in action and saying, dude, you're gonna either end up losing everything, you're gonna be dead, or God knows what, but you can't keep going like this. And actually starting the podcast actually put me on my healing journey. I wouldn't be as stable as I am if I didn't do this, because whether one person listens or a million, I'm healing myself. Talking to amazing people such as yourself and those that I've interacted with, it's one of those deals where it's like, I have to keep doing this. And I hope people get curious about their own healing journey to say, hey, look, what's my thing? You don't need to start a
Mm.
podcast. You don't have to have a beautiful place in another country to help heal other people. You just have to say, okay, you're standing in the middle of somewhere. Which way do I go to start healing? But you know what? you can go anywhere and see what life puts in front of you with the view of, I want to be a better person.
Yeah, that's that's beautiful. It sounds like you put yourself through some exposure therapy inadvertently. Um,
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences, and it's all been towards, you know, being the best, especially because even though I did have a father, it wasn't as traditional as some may think.
mm,
And so I'm raising my children without the experience of having that sort of stability in my life. So it's a journey in and of itself, because I always say, like, I don't, even though to a certain extent I might be, I don't really want to be their ultimate trauma. And I want them to know that, okay, look, you got a dad, he went through some shit, but he loves you and he wants to make things better for you. And hopefully that relationship can be something better than it is.
yeah, yeah, that's very
Yeah.
beautiful. Um, I think it's important I'm a parent as well, and I'm acutely aware that my son is he's aware of my story. I've written a book. I've featured on podcasts such as yours, and he he actually like for a school project. They at school had to do a presentation on their fathers, and what they did was they had the screen up on the wall of the classroom, and they Googled each dad. And I've done several interviews with newspapers, etc. And it just so happened that at that time, one of the newspaper articles that I'd done, or interviews that I'd done, was featuring quite highly in the Google rankings because it's quite a well-known newspaper. And the first thing that comes up in the headline was, I used to be a meth addict and now I heal other people or other addicts. And that was the first thing that came up. And he had never known that. And he was only 10 years old when he saw it. And it wasn't just him seeing it for the first time. He was seeing it with all his classmates and also his form teacher as well. And that was quite confronting for him. And I had to do a lot of work with him on uh, what led me down that path, how I ended up there, but how I also got myself out of it, and my healing subsequent to that period of my life when I was addicted to meth. Um, so that was an interesting parenting experience that I never thought I would have. But of course, with modern day technology, these things are all out there, aren't they? So you have to address them with your children. The days of family secrets are diminishing as technology advances.
Now, the Beekeepers Trauma Informed Model centers safety, trust, choice, empowerment, and collaboration. Can you share an example of how one of those principles changes what happens compared to more traditional treatment?
Yeah, I think we our foundations are built on compassion and compassionate care. We don't view patients as a cash cow. We don't view them as a metric. We don't view them as a number. We don't view them as something that sits in the profit and loss account, if you like. And that sometimes means that I make decisions in the interests of our patients that the investors don't like. Because let me give you an example. We had one amazing individual come to us, and she didn't have any money. And we are a private treatment center, so yes, we do cost money. And she came to us, and she was crowdsourcing her own treatment. She had been a heroin addict for 20 years. She was a survivor of significant trauma, an incredible story sat behind her and she came to us, and she was doing a GoFundMe page for her treatment, and she'd raised enough money for about 40 days worth of treatment, uh, or less than that. By that point, it was about 20 days of treatment. And knowing her history, we knew she needed at least 90 days. So I said, look, we'll match every dollar you raise, we'll match a dollar as well as a company, um, for you, because we want you to get the best possible treatment. And hell, man, like her fundraising took off. So she was here for like 6 months. It cost me a fortune. And she just came back about, it was about 3 weeks ago, and she came here to teach her. She went off to India and became a yoga instructor. And she just came back here, and gave a yoga class, to our existing clients here at the moment, which was just fantastic. Seeing the transformation in this woman when she first came to us. I don't like using the word broken, because it had the negative connotations, but she was on her knees in terms of desperation, and now she's just flying. She's doing incredibly well. Another example is if someone's not ready to leave us and they've run out of cash to pay for their treatment, we'll chuck in a free week, we'll chuck in an extra couple of weeks for free, just to help stabilize them enough so we know that they're leaving us in the most responsible, safest way possible. And other treatment centers wouldn't do that. They would fling you out on your ass the moment insurance didn't pay, um, or you ran out of money. For us, it's not just about the cash, it's about the outcome for the individual and making sure that we do the best possible job for that person. Um, and I think combining it with the work of that I was talking about earlier of Bessel van der Kolk, and the body keeps the score, and the somatic work, so working with the body physically as well as working with the mind, because the mind and the body are connected through a process called interoception, um, really makes a profound difference to the client's journey with us. And we deal with some tricky individuals who come to us with profound trauma or personality disorders, who have never been shown the patience and affection and care and consistent love, that they really need in order to heal. And a testament to that is the fact that other treatment centers will send, their patients that they can't deal with to us, and we will have success with them, because as soon as people come to us, they feel like they're coming into the embrace of the beekeeper. Um, it's more of a hug as they come in, and I think that makes all the difference. And that I credit to the team, but also the culture that we've built here amongst the team, which then transcends into the treatment planning and the treatment formulation, and the overall environment that we've created here as well.
I'll be interested to know because I interviewed another individual, Dr. Corey Gentry, and he released a book about how treatment centers in America would take advantage of teens. Do you, on behalf of the parents, also take in the teens? And how has that been with the age difference and how you put them on a path to healing?
Yeah, so we don't take teens. Um, that's a specialist area of work, working with adolescents and young people in particular. I spend the bulk of my career working with young people, especially those who've come in contact with the law or who are involved in drugs or who have experienced sexual violence. It's not something that we do here because we're not equipped for it, in terms of our clinical team. And also mixing adult populations and mixing young populations can create difficulties and risks that need to be managed. And our site just isn't set up for it. So we let other people do that. It is an emerging area, especially around, dependency on devices and gaming addiction is a huge rampant problem, and digital addiction for young people, especially in the US. And I'm hearing a lot from my US colleagues that they're looking for centers to send young people with relatively high acuity in terms of their mental health needs. And there just aren't the services out there. And unfortunately, in this space, there are a lot of people who operate under the radar, but also not in the best interests of the people that they're working with, and are in it for the money, and uh, uh, are, in my view, and I'll say it publicly, and I've said it publicly before, they're charlatans. And I will scream from the rooftops when I see bad practice. And I've seen it in many cases when it comes to working with young people, uh, people who shouldn't be doing it, but they're doing it, and they're taking advantage of the parents, and they're taking advantage, more importantly, of the children as well. I get pretty
Absolutely.
passionate about
For
that
me, that was
subject.
a yeah, it was a striking episode, and I hope you get to check that one out too. He's a very passionate person. He's been through it himself, and seeing how he fights tooth and nail, I think that's something you can relate to.
Absolutely. And
Now,
it happens in the adult sector as well.
yeah, I could imagine. Now, living and working in Southeast Asia, you see expats who look like they're in paradise, but maybe quietly falling apart. What mental health challenges do you see in in that expat population that people don't recognize enough?
I think there are, so people have an expectation of what life is like as an expat, and they will often look at it through rose-tinted lenses. And life here it's lovely in many respects, but there's a huge cultural difference that needs to be overcome. So unless you decide to learn the language, which is not easy, uh, and really uh, get involved in your local community, uh, then you're going to end up living on an island. And a lot of expats live in silos. They live by themselves. They live in these small groups and small communities and don't really integrate with wider society. And it can be very hard to integrate into wider society here anyway, because foreigners tend to be viewed very much as foreigners. So even if you learn the language, become culturally attenuated, you'll always be considered a foreigner, whether you like it or not. You'll never be one of them, as it were. Uh, and that isolation can bring about its own mental health challenges, because you don't have the same support network that you would have in your home country. And a lot of people will come to a place like Thailand, Cambodia, or the surrounding countries, because they're running away from something. Uh, and that thing that they're running away from will always catch up with them when they're here. It'll just do it in a different way. And then you don't have your support network around you to help you cope with the fallout of whatever it is that you're running away from. So we do see a lot of anxiety and depression amongst the expat community. We do also see a lot of substance misuse as well, because people come here because it's cheap to retire, and alcohol is very cheap. Uh, Drugs are not as widely available, but they are widely available. So we end up with quite a few people spending their time, uh, when someone might have a drink at, say, 7 p.m. or 6 p.m., and they might do it 3 or 4 days a week, or 1 or 2 days a week. That turns into 7 days a week, and 6 p.m. becomes 5 p.m., and that becomes 4 p.m., and that then becomes 2 p.m., and then suddenly 12 o'clock is the time that you can have your first beer, and before you know it, they're full-blown alcoholics. So that's another issue as well, because of the wide availability of having a good time. Because we live in a tourist destination where people come to have fun, and you can do that, but then they're leaving and going back to their regular lives. Whereas here, people are staying in that fun vibe and continue to have fun, and don't know when to press the off button, especially if they don't have a job and they're retired, or they're working as digital nomads, or whatever it might be.
Mm. And thank you for the insight on that. Now, switching gears to you as a hands-on CEO leading a team of 120 plus people, how do you personally keep from burning out or be mindful of any of your staff from doing the same?
So we put staff well-being at the same level. We peg it with client well-being. So for us, they're equally as important. So we have very generous leave. Um, in Southeast Asia, you normally work 6 days a week. We only ask our staff to work 5 days a week. Everyone gets 32 days leave a year, so they get plenty of time off, downtime, which helps reduce the risk of burnout. We have a program of self-care in the company as well, given we have all the experts in-house already for it. In addition to that, my own self-care regime really focuses on the things that I practice predominantly are meditation. Um, I have a relatively strict routine. I get up at 4 o'clock every morning. Um, I have half an hour to myself where I set intentionally the goals of my day, but I'm also very boundaried with my work as well. It's very easy to take the 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 trauma that you're dealing with in the workspace and the work environment back home with you, and making sure that you have those boundaries in place is really critical for maintaining your own mental health. Because if I'm not on the ball, then I'm no use to anyone. And I'm very mindful of my own mental health and the fact that I'm still working through my previous traumas, um, and need to continue to do so, because it's very easy when you work in an environment and you're a so-called professional, um, to let that slip and that work slip that you need to continuously do on yourself. So I have a clinical supervisor who I see once every 2 weeks, who makes sure that I'm on the straight and narrow and I'm still doing the work that I need to do. Um, and then I also practice Buddhism meaningfully as well, by going to my local temple once every couple of weeks and praying, um, some meditation with the monks there. I just try and keep myself settled, grounded, and also conscious, living consciously as well.
Mm. I would have
But
pegged you for
also
maybe like
tending.
a parkour guy or something like that.
Well, I'm conscious that I'm also in recovery as well, and recovery is like a garden that you need to
Mhm.
tend to. It's very easy to let it
Yes.
overgrow, and so I connection and community are also really important aspects of what I do too, and writing as well.
Now, when you look at the future of the beekeeper beyond the areas that you service, what kind of legacy do you hope you and your team leave in how mental health care is done in this part of the world?
That's a fantastically easy question for us to answer, because all of us have a shared vision for it. Um, one of the reasons we set the beekeeper up, beyond uh, the legacy that we want to leave in the names of those that we lost in the accident, was we really wanted to set a new standard of care, not just in Southeast Asia, but also uh, Europe and the US, and other places as well. So we don't judge ourselves necessarily by the standards of our peers in Southeast Asia. Um, we like to exceed the accreditation standards and registration standards. So we're internationally accredited by the American Accreditation Institute. Um, uh, we constantly seek to do things better, and self-improve, and we don't look to others necessarily for inspiration. We look inwardly in terms of what it is that we can do better and leave a lasting footprint with the clients that we've worked with both historically and also presently as well. And one of our, just this morning before we started this podcast, we had 2 inquiries that came through last night, and both of those inquiries were referrals from former patients who've been with us, which I think speaks volumes in upon itself. So our legacy is, if you like, the people that we've had the privilege of touching the lives of.
That's awesome. And just giving, I guess, someone a taste for someone who's listening, who's stuck in this survival, addiction, trauma, or just, how they say like white knuckling it through life. How
Mm.
do you welcome them to take one small step towards that space between trauma and peace?
It's a really profound question. For those who are white knuckling it, um, I would really advocate that connection and the message that you're not alone, and there are others that are going through this, that not only can you reach out to, but they also want you to reach out to them and they want to reach out to you for collective support. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go to fellowship. It doesn't mean there are many different ways that we can connect with others. Um, Connection can have such a profound impact on our recovery and our ability to navigate trauma and all its manifestations and all its diversity. Uh, and I profoundly believe that that connection can be the first and most important step moving forwards, whether it's with a loved one, whether it's with a stranger, and whether it's with someone that you're just getting to know as a friend or someone that's already in your life. Um, that can make all the difference in the world. It's just having the courage to say, "Hey, I'm here," and I could do with a little bit of support or a conversation.
That's an awesome first step for somebody to take. That's very simple, very mindful, and thank you for that. I hope someone takes heed in that and puts themselves on a path to something more wonderful. And finally, where can listeners learn more about the Beekeeper, connect with you, or find your book and interviews if they feel called to explore this kind of integration, trauma informed healing more deeply?
Sure. So if you just Google Beekeeper House, we'll come up straight away, and you can get a hold of us. There's a WhatsApp icon, email, telephone number. Um, we also have Instagram, Facebook. We've got all the kind of main social media channels. So that's beekeeperhouse.com. And then if someone wants to reach out to me personally, they can just reach out to my team on the website and they'll connect them to me directly. Um, my book is available on Amazon. It has got the amusing name of The Line, The Bitch, and The Wardrobe. So, The Line, The Bitch,
Nice.
and The Wardrobe. So, the line refers to my previous drug use. The bitch refers to people in my life who've brought difficulty upon it, and the wardrobe makes reference to going in and out of the closet as I got older. So that's available on Amazon. I would love to
I'll
say all
make
good
sure
bookstores,
to
but it's
have
been
that.
not accessible.
I'll make sure to everyone has the available links when they check out your episode. Robert, thank you for your strong vulnerability. Thank you for everything that you're doing for yourself, for your team, for remembering those that you loved as family, who is helping just do this amazing work that you're doing. And thank you for gracing me with your presence and this amazing work that you do. And thank you, just thank you very much. I really appreciate our time and this interview, and it's nothing short of I love individuals who do the work that you do, and thank you for agreeing to be on my show.
An absolute pleasure. It's been a real joy speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oscar. That was a wonderful episode. If you've ever wondered what real trauma-informed care looks like beyond buzzwords, Robert's story is a living blueprint. We talked about carrying bodies from a crash site, staying present for families, mapping a mental health desert in Cambodia, and why healing means teaching people to move from unthinking reactions to thoughtful responses in that tiny space between trigger and choice. Adelante, siempre, por tu mente. Forward, always, for your mind. This is the FYI, I Am Damaged podcast.
In the bright green jungle where the tall trees sway, lived a little elephant who felt big fins. Every day Logan loved to splash and play by the riverside, but sometimes wobbly legs made him wanna run and hide. Tummy doing flips like a stormy shaking drum. A tiny voice inside him whispered, what if I can't have fun? Then Brandon the wise monkey smiled from the tree, said, little friend, take a breath, come and sit with me. Feel your feet on the ground, feel your hand on your heart. We're breathing together, that's how courage starts. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through this, scared and know what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Next day in the jungle they played a game of tag. Logan felt the nervous pull, his body started to drag, but he remembered Brandon and the tools he had inside. Took a deep gentle breath instead of running off to hide. Breathe in the sunshine, breathe out all the fear. Stomped his big elephant feet and felt his courage appear. With the wiggle of his trunk and a lap so free, whispered to himself, there's a lion heart in me. His friends saw him smiling as he joined in the game. They asked, Logan, what's your secret? You don't look the same. He said, when my thoughts get loud, I don't have to stay small. I breathe and move my body and I stand up tall. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind be wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through the scared and know what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Little heart listening, this song is for you. It's okay to feel scared, that feeling's true. But just like Logan in the jungle so wide, you've got quiet, steady strength living inside. So breathe in slowly, feel your feet on the floor. Let your shoulders soften, you don't need to. Whisper to yourself when the worries rush through. I am strong, I am strong, I am safe, and I know what to do. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, lay it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I come on Logan showed the jungle, and now you show the world. There's a strong-minded hero in every boy and girl in the bright green jungle. When the stars shine above, brave little hearts fall asleep, feeling safe and loved.